Good morning. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to Faith Bible Church. We thank you for coming out to worship with us here, those of you here in person, those of you who are attending via Facebook or through YouTube, we welcome you all. We invite you all to come and visit with us here at the church and share in the community here of Faith Bible Church. If you're a visitor with us, please fill out a visitor information card. We would like to have your mailing information so that we can send you our emails. And one of the benefits that you get is two excellent short devotionals that Pastor Tim does every week that I look forward to them coming in. In the foyers, you'll also find prayer request cards. If you have a prayer request, please put it on the card, put the card in the giving boxes, and the elders will pray over your prayer requests during the week. We thank you for your giving. We support many ministries around the globe, from right here in Boerne, San Antonio, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, Africa, and we can only do that through your giving. And we just ask that you would continue to support those because they mean so much to us. It's the primary giving that we have is to those ministries. One of my favorite parts of the service every week is communion. And for this week, I'm using a verse that we all know, the famous 3:16 that you see all over the athletic fields. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. And we all have that to look forward to, that by believing in Jesus, we receive salvation. We receive that magic ticket into heaven. But it's so much more than that, because he comes to give you eternal life right here and now, not just when we pass. On the night he was betrayed, the Lord Jesus took the bread and broke it, gave it to his disciples, and said, "Take and eat. This is my body, which is broken for you." In the same manner, after supper, he took the cup and gave it to his disciples and said, "This cup represents the new covenant in my blood. As often as you drink it in remembrance of me." And so we thank Jesus with grateful and thankful hearts for what he did on the cross for us. And we just accept that sacrifice, and we thank him so much for it. In Jesus' name we pray.
Well, good morning, everyone. I thought we were going to have to put out a silver alert because we had Sunday school back there in the, that you guys had it in your community because your air conditioner wasn't working. And then ours went out, and it wasn't just not working, it was putting out heat. And have you ever heard of hot yoga? So it's a new thing, we're calling it a hot Bible study. But I bailed out. I was like gone. And then so everybody left early, and I came over here, and then I'm like, what happened to everybody in that Sunday school class? Like, Doug disappeared? I didn't see John until I saw him way in the back, so I was getting ready to put out that for the Texas Transportation, silver alert, missing Sunday school participants. And then I went out there, and my wife was talking to two other ladies, and I opened the door, and I said, "You hear that music? That means church started." And of course, it had no effect on anything, but I guess we know who's living right. I'm glad that you're here. Of course, 4th of July, we celebrate the independence of our nation, and we get Monday off, right? So that's always good to have an extra day off. In the message last week, we saw that John's going to come at us pretty hard. He tells us that the gospel is really all about passing from death to life. That even though we're physically alive, we were spiritually dead. And he came and went to the cross to give us forgiveness, but we needed more than just forgiveness. We needed life. And so he came and showed by his resurrection power that he gave us the very thing that we needed, life. That he gave his life for us, and he gave his life as us so he could live his life in us, and living in us then express his life through us. And he confronted us by saying, the Son came and he laid down his life. And we, as his children, as his followers, are called to lay down our lives in the same way. And we have a hard time with this because, believe it or not, we're all kind of narcissistic. Now, I had to look up what that meant. But narcissism is what? It's easy to identify in everyone else, right? Because it's all about me. It's about me and what I want and my priorities and my desires. And if you're not with me, then you're bad. You're the enemy. And I like to label other people narcissists because it's easy and it lets me off the hook. But in the reality is we're all kind of born narcissistic because it's all about us. And he's saying, listen, that might be your natural impulse for it to be all about you. But he's saying when the gospel impacts our lives, it's no longer about what I get or my desires. It's all about what he wants to do in me and what he wants to do through me. And so I ask you the question, in which ways are you regularly giving yourself sacrificially for other people's benefit? Because that is the outgrowth of the gospel. That we realize that it is going to be costly and inconvenient in expressing myself or allowing God to express himself through me. And so we stop and we reflect and we remember that passing from death to life is not based upon a doctrinal statement or a denominational affiliation. It's how we express love. We like denominations and doctrinal statements because then it can all be an intellectual process. Who's in, who's out. Now, you guys are singing that song about dancing, obviously not written by a Baptist. Although King David probably wasn't a Baptist either because he was dancing. I don't know how that's going to work because I just don't think my feet would work that well. But the point really is we like to make everything fit in a box, and he makes it so simple for us. The world knows that we are a unique people, not by what we believe, not by what we say, but in the manner in which we love others. In the manner that we allow his love to flow through us. To be a people who are transformed means way more than assenting to certain information. It's to have a heart that is impacted by God's love, and now a heart that is transformed to say, I want to be the vessel in which he expresses that love. And then we can lay down our lives for the brethren. So let's look at verse 17 through 20. He says, but if anyone has the world's goods and see his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. By this we shall know that we are of the truth and reassure our heart before him. For whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart, and he knows everything. Well, Father, I pray that you would speak through your servant into the hearts of your beloved. And Lord, I really do pray that we wouldn't just be hearers, but our hearts and lives would be transformed. That your Spirit would take your word and bring it alive in our hearts and show us how you want to transform how we think, how we live in this world. And Lord, I pray that you just have your way. In Jesus' name, amen. So he starts off and he says, but if anyone has the world's goods. Now, what is our instant response? Those people. Not us. I mean, this does not apply to us because, we're just making it. But the people who have the world's goods, it's pretty heavy on them. And thankfully, that's none of us. Now, Vanessa and I were talking about something. I was asking her to find me something on Amazon or something. And she's like, honey, they just don't make that kind anymore. And I'm like, what is wrong with these people? And I was walking in the bathroom. We go, first world problems. Like, if they don't make the T-shirt the way I like with the material I like, or they don't make this or they don't do that, then we can get quite upset. I mean, how's our coffee made and what kind of cream? And just think of all of the little things that can get us agitated, and they're all first world problems. And so we say, well, those people have the world's goods, and we think of someone else, but it's all of us. Most of us have a certain problem because of too much. Couldn't you classify a lot of the health problems that Americans deal with? You wouldn't say it's a lack. You'd say it's too much. And it's not just the food we eat or what we have available to us. He's saying we are the people with the world's goods. We are the people that have closets that are full of things we never use. We are the people who have made $1 billion storage industry. We are the people who have all kinds of things. And we are the people who have the American dream, which is all about how much more can we get and keep. And so that we are not satisfied and we don't give because we don't see ourselves as the ones who have the world's goods. Oh, that's really good preaching, Pastor. That's really good. You should focus on that. Okay. You see, I think our temptation is to always look to someone else who is better off than us so as to defer responsibility, but he's speaking to every single one of us. We have Christian brothers and sisters around the world who don't know anything about indoor plumbing, toilets, food, even a bed. And we're picky about what we eat and what we like and what we don't like. Every week, and especially now because Sri Lanka is in this crisis where the government, defaulted on their debt. And so they couldn't buy fuel even. Imagine this. No regular citizen can even buy a tank of gas or diesel until the end of July. Power getting cut off. And people in the jungle with not so much the jungle, but out in the rural areas who have no food. Who are just trying to find a way. And it's not just Sri Lanka, it's all around the world. And you know what? We think, I sure hope someone will do something about that. I sure hope someone will do something. I got, I have this WhatsApp that I connect with all my guys with, and he one of my main guys, he was like, Pastor, what are we going to do? He goes, because even here in Colombo, which is the capital, we have all of these slum areas where people who have AIDS, HIV AIDS, and the people with leprosy, and they're not eating. They can't get any food. And I'm thinking to myself, thankfully I've gotten some help to be able to do some food packages and and I'm sitting there, it just never ends. And my temptation is to say, well, how can I make a difference with 26 million hungry people? And it would be easy to say, well, I just can't do anything about it, so I don't do anything. And I said, you know what? I want you to contact these 3 churches, and you tell them if they will organize and do the cooking, we will provide a lunch meal every Saturday. And it would be an opportunity for us to share the gospel, just to love people in need. My point is, we always want someone else to do something because we think we're the ones who are in need. But he's saying, listen, if you have the world's goods, if we have indoor plumbing and toilets that flush and a bed to sleep in, and we have so much food we can be picky about what we eat, or we need to lose weight, and we take it all for granted, then we are those people. Think about it. If we have houses where we have rooms that no one sleeps in, we are those people. If our only preoccupation is the next vacation or the next vehicle or the next thing we're going to buy, the next thing we're going to store, the next thing we're going to keep, then we need to realize we are those people. Well, that's really good, Pastor. In fact, we are purposefully ignorant. You hear me? We are purposefully ignorant of the needs of others because it would interfere in our consumption. It would interfere with our self-pleasure. It would interfere with our self-advancement. We in the West are the richest of the people of the world. Stop, take a minute, and think of all of the luxuries that you take for granted. We've been abundantly blessed, and with these blessings, we have been called to give sacrificially in the same manner as Jesus. Not just one more thing, one more pleasure, one more accumulation. He says, but if anyone has the world's good and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, so what do? Oh, there's someone in need and I can't do anything about it, and we close our hearts and walk away. When Vanessa and I were early on in ministry, I had left the corporate world, and we talk about this idea you get in those routines, and you get home from church Sunday night, because this is back in the day when you had to go to church 3 times a week to be good. So, you had to go Wednesday night, you had to go Sunday morning, and Sunday school, then Sunday night, then visitation, and bus calling, and whatever, So you get home Sunday night, man, you're exhausted. And I would sit in my little recliner, and Vanessa would make popcorn. I don't mean microwave popcorn. I mean the real thing, and put all the salt and butter, and we had this metal bowl, and she'd fill it all up, and I would sit there and begin to eat my popcorn. And every Sunday night, they had the same show about starving children in Africa. This is before cable, people. There was no streaming back then. There was a few channels, and on Sunday night, It was the starving children in Africa. And I would sit there and look at those children, and they'd always have goobers in their eyes, and flies would be stuck to their eyes, and extended bellies like some of you, and just like their arms would be pencil thin, and man, I'd be like, somebody's got to do something. All through the program. And then I'd finally be fishing around for the last little, bits, and the program would turn off, and I'd put the bowl in the kitchen and go to bed. Now, I had real pity for those people, but I never once made a difference in their lives because I closed my heart. The scripture says, and of some have compassion, making a difference. You see, the difference between pity is me feeling sorry for you, and compassion is your hurt in my heart. And that's the difference between making a difference. And so John's coming right at us, and he's saying, listen, Jesus laid down his life for you when you were at your worst, and now he's calling you to lay down your life for others. And then he asks us this question, well, how can you who have the world's goods see that your brothers are in need and close your heart against him? Deuteronomy 15:7, he gave these instructions right from the very beginning. He says, if among you one of your brothers should become poor, if any of your towns within your land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother. See, we can't afford to be content with a Christianity that is all centered in self, that is centered in the pursuit of our own kingdom. The needs are great if only we'll open our eyes, if we're willing to see. The tragedy is that we have not learned to take this seriously. We have come to the place where we accept that we are the privileged and God wants us happy. He wants us prosperous. He wants us rich. And all of us go back and say, well, I'm not rich. We're all rich by the fact that we are here. We live our lives based on a standard of what they call the American dream. And so, man, you got to have more. You got to save more. You got to have more in your investments. You say, I don't have any need, but how many of you look at the stock market and worry? If you look at the stock market and you're worried about your investments, you are the people who have the world's goods. I'm not saying you shouldn't invest. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying you can't defer responsibility. John's not letting you off the hook. The need of the world isn't really heroic acts of martyrdom, but for heroic acts of material sacrifice. If we can see others in need, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, and pass by them unconcerned, then all our words and our fine talk about love, as Paul says, just a clanging cymbal, just a bunch of noise. What makes us distinct as a people of God? We're known for how we love. And he's not talking about an emotion. He's talking about how we give ourselves sacrificially, selflessly for the benefit of others. And friends, I'm sorry, but it costs. It hurts. It's not sacrificial if it doesn't change our lifestyle. Who's kidding who? Now, when we were missionaries, one of the great joys was you had to go around churches and you had to, beg for money. basically. And you go church to church to church, and hopefully they would give what they called a love offering. That was a terminology they used in our circles. And so you'd go and you'd preach, and hopefully they'd give you a love offering. Sometimes they wouldn't. I mean, I literally survived in this Geo Metro 3-cylinder car and eating Taco Bell. You say, Taco Bell? Yes, because back then you could get a bean and cheese burrito for 59 cents. So 2 bean burritos and a Coke, and that was food for the day. And then you'd go to the church and they'd give you a love offering. Well, finally I realized that's a bunch of hooey. They aren't giving you a love offering, they're giving you a reason offering. You say, what? I'm going to describe how almost everyone here gives. You open the checkbook. You look at what you have. You think about your expenses. You think about your obligation to the mortgage company, the car payment, the credit card, the fuel. You go all the way down and you look at all of your obligations and you say, well, I have this much left. I guess I can give that. What do you call that? You've reasoned it out. You've reasoned out what you're able to do. And hopefully you do that at least. But you see what I'm saying? God isn't calling you to give a reason offering. He's calling you to give a love offering. What is love? The agape love of God is selfless, sacrificial giving for the benefit of others, and we haven't begun to do this until it interferes with my self-pursuit, my self-will, my own pleasure. It costs me something. It changes how I live. It changes how I buy. It changes how I think. This is what it is to lay down our lives. Ezekiel 33, verse 31 says, and they come to you as people come, and they sit before you as my people, and they hear what you say, but they will not do it. For with lustful talk in their mouths, they act, their heart is set on their gain. Oh, well, that's not very nice of him to say. Now think about it. Is this not representative of us? We come, we live in this beautiful country with all of our freedoms, and we come to church and we sing the songs about I surrender, and we have no intentions of doing it. But it feels good. We come, we hear, but we won't do it. Why? Because our hearts are filled with lustful desire for more. Okay, I guess I should move on. You see, I've done my best to make sure that you can't claim ignorance by presenting to you the needs that we participate in, reaching out to people afflicted with leprosy and trying to build homes for people who don't have a home, and get them a well so they can have water, and gardens so they can have food to eat, and a toilet that they, not a flush one, an outhouse. And it brings us great joy, and I try to share that with you, and I'm grateful for everyone who's helped us in this process. But I can't force you to forsake the kingdom of self for the kingdom of God. But I can confront you with this thought. There's only room on the throne for one. And if you're on the throne, God isn't. So quit pretending. At least be honest with yourself. I mean, we need to see that we are called as a people to be so generous and sacrificial in our giving that it impacts not only our community, but our world. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, I heard everyone, they were so excited because Roe got overturned. Well, great. But here's my question. What are you going to do to impact everyone's life and make a difference in everyone who's affected by that? There's no reason to have some political clap fest if you're not willing to say, you know what? There's a girl who's pregnant and doesn't know what to do. We will do whatever we can to help her get through. And that's why we invest as a church heavily every month and through different projects, through the Pregnancy Care Center here in the Hill Country and in San Antonio. But we need to do more. You know, I know people, they're just tired of me saying it, but the reason we need to get rid of the mortgage that we have, that we're spending thousands of dollars each month, is that all money that should be going to impact our world. But as long as we all sit there and go, I sure hope somebody does something, nothing gets done. Until we're, each one of us in our own way, willing to say, Lord, what is it that you want to do to meet this need through me? Listen, I'm never going to tell you what to give. I don't know what anyone gives. It's none of my business. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm trying to get you to open your eyes, open your ears, and hear the voice of God and say, Jesus, you laid down your life for me. What do you want to do through me? And when our hearts and minds are just filled with the lustful desire for more and more and more and better, then we need to stop and say, Lord, help me to hear what I'm complaining about. I mean, I get caught in it. We were having trouble with this electronic gate on our property. You know, the thing that you click and it opens so that you don't have to open your own gate? And this thing kept breaking down. You should have heard me whining. And I thought to myself, what is wrong with you? You're complaining that your electric gate doesn't work? When there's people who are starving to death? When there's people who are hungry, when there's people who don't know anything about the good news, this is your primary concern, getting the gate working? I got to have more? I got to do more? No. We have to answer. Here's the question. He says, how does God's love abide in him? He says, okay, you guys, you're the one with all of the goods, and you know there's this great need, and you've closed off your heart, and you're only willing to give what seems reasonable to you, what seems affordable to you. And then he asks you, well, you say that you have God living in you, but something's wrong. Because he says, how does the love of God abide in a heart that is unconcerned about others? He said, when your heart is impacted, truly impacted by the incredible love that God has for each and every one of us, it's transformative to help us not be a selfish, self-centered, self-pursuing people, but to realize that everything I have, all of my possessions, all of my investments, all of the property, all of it isn't mine but God's. And I'm simply a steward of it. And I say, Lord, it's all yours. What do you want to do? And then by faith saying, he told me to do this, this is what I'm doing. That's what faith is. You hear God and you respond. You don't calculate it out. You don't say, well, you know, what am I going to do when I'm old? Or what am I going to do when this? Or what am I going to do? You see what I'm saying? Hear him. Obey him. I mean, we know the love of Christ in that he laid down his life for us. But to be a disciple of Jesus is to lay down one's life for the brethren. And giving one's life immediately translates itself into generosity to those who are in need. So I'm really at the point where I don't even want to call myself a Christian sometimes, for fear that I will be identified with the American church. What does the American church love? The American church loves to be told your best life now. God wants you healthy, wealthy, and wise. Amen. I'm not saying God doesn't love you and want what's best for you. But to be a follower of Christ, to be a disciple of Jesus, is to live in a manner that looks like Jesus, sounds like Jesus, and acts like Jesus. Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. John reminds us that love isn't an adjective. Love is a verb. It isn't primarily about how we feel, but the way in which we live and speak and give sacrificially for the benefits of others. Love is always demonstrated in truth. Jesus demonstrated his love for us and that he died for us when we were sinners. We can't just say, I love you. I love you, Lord. I love you, and not demonstrate it. It's just words. But when God says, I love you, he demonstrated it. It goes beyond the individual. It becomes an action and expression. And we've uttered glowing words about God's love for us and our love for men, but we have built barriers around ourselves and refuse to let others see our inner lives because we have become isolated units. By this, we shall know that we are of the truth and reassure our hearts before him. So the first thing he says is like, well, what is truth? Jesus is standing before Pilate, and what does he say? What is truth? Full of cynicism. But remember, it was the wrong question. Because in our society now, everyone has their own truth. You have your truth, and I have my truth. You know, it's a bunch of hooey. Truth isn't a what, truth is a who. In John 14:6, he says, Jesus said to them, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. He said, the only way to know God in intimacy as your Papa is through him. The only way you can really understand Jesus is not through religion, but an intimate relationship with him who is the truth. He defines what is truth, not me or my opinions. I mean, think about it. If we're living from him, who is our life, who lives in us, we know it is because his love is flowing through us. We don't self-generate it. Our lives are increasingly going to act and speak and sound like Jesus. They're going to attract the same kind of people. And when we allow his love to flow through us, he says, I'll give you an assurance in your heart that you are in the truth, that you're in him. And he is in you. To be a Christian and have Christ in us is to love. And that love gives assurance to our hearts because now we are liberated from our self-consumption or our preoccupation with us. In 1 John 1:8, he said, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. He said, listen, if you say, hey, here I am, and I'm perfect, I got no problems, I've never sinned, he's saying Jesus isn't living in you, buddy. I don't care what church you go to. I don't care what doctrinal statement you sign. Truth is always expressed through love. And he makes the impossible possible, and that assures our heart. When you begin to experience loving your enemies, you know that's a God thing. When you're willing to humble yourself and give up the right to be right, you know that's a God thing. When all of a sudden your priorities and your focus is not what is convenient or comfortable to you, but willing to go out of our way and be inconvenienced to love on others, we know that's a God thing. This is where we get assurance. And so he's telling us, let the nature of love that is within you express itself in some form. Find someone in need and help them. Give of yourself. For whenever our hearts condemn us, God is greater than our hearts, and he knows everything. I remember like having this time in my relationship with the Lord, and like I'd be like, oh man, because we had this constant hammering, like you got to keep a short list with God. You guys have heard that terminology, right? Keep a short list with God. And so I was always trying to keep a short list with God and confess all my sins and tell him everything bad that I had thought or done. Like all the news at 9, you know? Only to realize that, wait a second, he knows everything. I'm not confessing to inform God because he was preoccupied with someone else. I'm confessing to say the same thing that he says about it. I'm confessing what he says about me, who he says I am, and how sometimes I act like a freak of nature. And then sometimes our hearts sense condemnation. See, everything I'm saying to you today, it's not about you going home and saying, man, I really feel guilty. Don't go home feeling guilty. That is not my purpose, to make you feel guilty or shameful. My heart is to awaken you to see what God wants to do in you. To not miss out on the opportunity that God has given you to be the vessel in which he expresses his life. To let him set you free from the things that you're trusting in outside of him. You see, because all of a sudden we can say these really conflicting things, right? We'll say, man, God saved my soul, and I know I'm going to heaven. I can trust him with that. But I can't trust him with my finances. Nope. Like, think about how backwards that is. You can trust him with your soul for eternity, but not your budget? Cuckoo. I mean, seriously. We have a God that we can trust. And when we feel the condemnation, we remember this. He already knows everything. And God is greater than our heart. That's good news. We can always tell the voice of the enemy, because the voice of the enemy always says, guilt, shame, you're a no good, lousy worm. And Jesus says, remember me, who you are, who I made you to be, what I want to do through you. You're loved. You're not a worm. You're loved. Will you let me love through you? Romans 8:1, everyone knows it, but it's good to think about it again. He says, there is therefore no condemnation to them who are in Christ Jesus. So let it never be said of Faith Bible Church that we are a people that go around condemning others. It's not our job. Let it be our mission and goal and purpose to be known simply as a people who love crazy generously, who are willing to be inconvenienced, who are willing to say, you know what, that changes how I live. It costs, but it's a great privilege. So, after such an encouraging and uplifting message, are you ready to let God reveal to you how blessed you really are? You know, when you go home and you sit down on the toilet and flush, man, that's living, man. I mean, in Thailand, Vietnam, especially if you were out in the jungle, we had squatters. Man, my knees won't do that no more. I mean, the fact that, you know what, we can go and get in our cars and complain about how much gas costs. I'm with you. I'm complaining. But that just shows how blessed I am that I can complain about it. And how blessed am I that I can go home and know that in the middle of a Texas summer, my house will be a beautiful 72 degrees. And that I have internet. And I have a cell phone with unlimited data. I mean, think about it. Everything we complain about should remind us how blessed we are. Because the vast majority of the world, they don't know it. I want to encourage you to really stop and count your blessings. I want to encourage you to ask God how he wants to give through you selflessly and sacrificially for others. You know, in our American world, we think it's all about more and bigger and better. Maybe God's saying, maybe I could downsize, live really comfortable, and have hundreds of thousands to give away. Instead of thinking, you know, I really just need one more thing and then I'll be happy. Realize it won't make me happy. Knowing that I've become a vessel that expresses love to hurting people, that brings joy to my life. Do you have confidence that you are of the truth? Because this is the invitation to everyone. Ray in the communion said, you know, for God so loved the world that he what? He gave. He gave what? The thing that was dearest to him, his son. That you and I might have eternal life. Not just when we die, but today. So Lord, I pray that your words would speak into the hearts of your beloved. That your children would really hunger and seek for that transformation that comes when we live in your love and allow your love to live through us. And I pray, Lord, that you would just work in a way that would bring about real transformation. That we would hunger and desire to be known only as your people because of the way we love others, the way we sacrifice selflessly, sacrificially, and giving to benefit others, to get free from our preoccupation with ourselves. I pray, Lord, that you would make it happen. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, will you all stand up and I'm going to pray a blessing over you? Father, these are your beloved children, and they are vessels of your life. And we thank you that through faith in you, you've taken us from death to life. And now, Lord, just help us to hear clearly your voice. How you want to love through us. How you want and call each of us to see, to open our eyes, to see the needs that abound in our world, and discover how you want us to give sacrificially, selflessly, to benefit others, to transform our community and the world in which we live. Lord, so let it be. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. I love you. Have a great week.